Hello, Mr. Gigabytes here, and I'm just going to do a little bit of ad-libbing about the retro keyboard case. I've been getting a lot of questions, and I'm hearing a couple of the same comments, and I just wanted to address a few of those in video format. And so one of the things is this is the retro keyboard case, and you can put an ITX motherboard in here like this one, or you can do you can put a Raspberry Pi in there. Making these prototypes has actually caused us to do a couple of redesigns, and one of the redesigns is on the back here. You see the cutout here for the Flex ATX power supply. A couple of people have noted that in examining the case. They say, well, you know, if I'm doing a Raspberry Pi, I don't need this cutout. And of course, if I'm doing a Raspberry Pi, I don't need this whole thing cut out either. Well, that actually has been resolved on the because these were cut out by hand. We just cut them out. When we actually go to do the CNC work, this piece here, I don't know if you can see it, but you see how there's the 3mm bottom, and this plate back here, there's about a half a centimeter. It's about 5 millimeters of material, and when you go to CNC this, it is not enough to keep the plate from vibrating. What we decided to do instead is this hole and this hole. They're going to CNC about 1.5 to 2 millimeters down all the way around. So this whole plate will actually be covered up, and you'll have this line around that you can follow with just a blade, a box cutter. This cutout won't be there unless you want it to be. It'll just be kind of a recessed line that you can just cut out. So that's one of the questions people had. Another concern was a concern I used to have with the old Commodore 64, and that is actually the keyboard height. Well, this case is a little bit different. The Commodore keyboard is actually recessed into the case. That actually couldn't happen for space reasons. It got in the way of too many things. It got too far down and too low, and the only way to change that would be to change the dimensions of the case, and then we're starting to depart from the original design and the original intent. Well, the people say that this keyboard's up way too high. This is about 4 centimeters here, and plus 3 millimeters and 3 millimeters, so it's about essentially 4.6 centimeters, which is almost 2 inches. And then you take into account the feet, and that adds another couple of millimeters. So yeah, you're at 5 centimeters, and that's definitely 2 inches. But what I've found is that if you look at people actually using and typing on and programming a Commodore computer, you'll notice that people don't actually rest their hands on the Commodore itself, because the keyboard is actually further down. In fact, there's only, I'd have to say maybe an inch and a half at best between the bottom of the Commodore keyboard and the edge, the rounded edge of the case. And actually, the edge of the case makes it even harder to rest your hands on, because they're just forever falling off. Well, with our case, we actually we took that into account, and for that reason and a couple others, we actually moved the keyboard up, so you actually have room to rest your wrists, and it's actually it's actually pretty comfortable to rest your wrists on the keyboard when you look at people actually using a Commodore computer, they float their hands, they float their wrists and everything above. They just kind of hold their arms like this. And it's actually, when you're a kid, it's annoying as heck. But when you're actually an adult and you can sit up higher, this is actually pretty comfortable. And that's how I even use this computer, because my office chair is nice and high, and this is kind of low for me. But I suppose but I have also used this computer sitting in my Lazy Boy with a keyboard tray, and I just lower that keyboard tray down, and then I can rest my wrists on the edge of the keyboard. And it's, even with my man-sized hands, it's not an uncomfortable proposition. Your experiences might vary, but it might be something you need to get used to. But push comes to shove, the keyboard comes out, so you can type and rest your wrists on your desk, or have a wrist rest down here. One of the other, while we're on the subject of design changes and things like that, one of the things that we actually changed on the cases is this side panel here. Now, the original intent was to have, and I don't know how well you can see it here. We were going to just pre-cut out all of these ports, and then you'd have different dongles that would fit in there. But we realized very quickly that, what if you wanted to change it? What if you wanted to change the case or change the ports, or didn't have the right dongles at the right size, or anything like that? Or maybe you wanted to put a reset button in here, or an LED light, or a hard drive LED light. You really couldn't do that so much if we had already pre-drilled all this whole side out. So what we came up with was actually the same thing Commodore kind of did, and that was to create this back panel. It's just held in with a couple of screws, and now these are nylon M2 screws. The screws on the final product might be different, but these nylon screws really work well with this material. But yeah, this plate is just held in with 2 screws, and let me pull this out for you real quick. It's just a panel that's a little bit larger than the hole, and you can drill that out, and you can mess it up, and then you can just order another one. We're probably going to sell them for maybe $1 with free shipping. I mean, they're very, very easy to replace, and this is the first one that we actually did this to make sure that it worked. The opening here, I believe, is a little over 1.5 centimeters. Hole will be a little bit larger than this. This is about 1.5 centimeters. This is the hole on the final product will actually be 2 centimeters. There's one other design change that we were thinking that this top plate had to be glued in to give the rest of the case stability. Well, what we discovered was that's actually not completely true. Once you glue these 3 sides in, the case is fairly sturdy already, and so you can actually put a couple of screws in each side here, hold this top plate in, and then what we did beyond that is we ended up gluing in some tabs onto this back plate. There's 6 of them total. There'll be one here, there'll be one here, one here, and then at the bottom we'll be able to screw the back plate in so it can be removed. So we can customize different back plates for this. That actually, doing that actually fulfills one of the purposes for this case, and that is we base this whole case, every measurement, on the Commodore 64. Now, it is a little bit taller, just a little bit taller case, front and back, but it isn't any. It's as wide as a Commodore, and the keyboard angles and everything are very, very, very similar to a Commodore. And the reason for that was to be able to actually mount a Commodore keyboard in the back here, and be able to custom manufacture the top plate, the keyboard plate, so that you could put an actual Commodore 64 keyboard into it. Now, if it just came in beige, what's the point? You know, honestly, a white, beige, or black, that's the same thing the other Commodore cases came in. Well, good news. So we could make your Commodore case out of any color that you wanted. So that would be, we haven't put those on the Indiegogo because it got to be too many options for the Indiegogo. There's a lot of things a lot of ways we can do it, and we need to be able to buy these in bulk initially to get these cases put into production. Once we're all set up, then we can actually design more custom options and come out with new colors, and they're already available. We just have to buy the stock and get them cut out. We've taken a lot of design cues from the Commodore 64, but clearly this is nothing like a Commodore 64 case. We're not trying to perfectly recreate a Commodore case. We want the essence of what it felt like to have a Commodore computer. We also wanted a case. I've been wanting to custom manufacture a case for a very long time. The advantage of working with this material is that it's customizable. And so once we're set up to do all this cutting and whatnot, then we can give you a box in whatever color you want. If you want something even more custom, I would say order a white or a black box, and then you can use model paint and some of the spray paint that's for plastics specifically. Some of those types of paints you can do. You could have one with flames going down the side. You could make it into you can do camouflage. You can do this is even easier than the ABS that the Commodore 64 and VIC-20s and things like that. It's even easier to work with than some of that plastic. That plastic was a lot harder, and over time it becomes more brittle. Maybe somebody asked me why, and I touched on that a little bit earlier. Why would I want to create a keyboard case? Who'd want to own one of these? Well, I've mentioned in my Indiegogo that retro gamers might be interested, just for the look and the feel, to have something different. You can, of course, get the keyboard case without any of the insides. That's also an option. And run the keyboard out the back and hook it up to your current computer, and then it'd be like typing on a Commodore 64. So if you've got an existing computer and just want the keyboard and the case, well, this is just a standard USB keyboard, and of course you'll get the stickers with it. If you take a look, you've got a lot of the Commodore symbols, that PET ski on there. You could cut that label in half and put it on the light-up keyboard. And I don't want to pull this too far out, but there's a lot of space on the light-up keyboard just to go underneath here. Now, you're not going to get some of the custom keys to go over top, but I suppose if you want to just if you wanted to put them over top, you could definitely do that. Oh, another question I had was, am I going to offer one with a white keyboard? And the answer is, I do plan to. I just didn't want to confuse Indiegogo too much with too many options. It seems kind of old-fashioned to some people, but honestly, a computer like this, very portable. Number one, you've got a gaming quality keyboard here, very robust. You can switch out your buttons on here. You can customize it, so people who want to do custom systems and things like that. The other thing is it takes up very little space. Now, I'm working on this little table, and it's about a 6-foot table. It's interesting. I'm editing the videos for the retro computer case that on a retro computer case computer. It takes up less space than my main computer, and my main computer is just a micro ATX media center case. Very, very small, very thin, but the amount of space that it takes up, even for a small little case like that, is just a little too much. And I just think it's a neat case. It's a little angular for some people's taste, and I get that. But it's a really neat case, and I've been really surprised at how comfortable it is to type on. Because I remember typing on my Commodore, and it just hurt my wrists. And I pined for the day when the keyboard would lay flat. In fact, to this day, my keyboards, they're not propped up at all. They lay as flat as they possibly can. The fact that I sit up higher and I just float my hands above it, it actually makes it very easy to type on. I really liked having around. I really liked owning my original computer. But at the time, it just didn't, the technology isn't there like it is today. You've got SD to IEC. There's a lot of support out there in the retro computing community. I mean, it's wonderful that there is so much support to give new life to these old machines. Even if you've just got a keyboard and a case, you can put a Raspberry Pi into the case, and there's 3D printing stuff that you can put into it and give it new life, and run the Vice emulator with the original keyboard. And I just think that's just awesome. That's what's really brought me back into it. That and people like the 8-Bit Guy and Petrofractic and Techmoan and a couple others that I'm neglecting to mention right now. They really made me realize that what kind of a community there is out there. And my children want these cases. They each want their own in their own color, and I promised them that I would do that. If nothing else, I'll just go and buy the stock and cut everything out myself. And then they'll kind of have a little bit of what I had when I was younger, but they'll also have a modern computer that just looks like a retro computer. They'll get to see and feel and experience some of the same things that I did with a computer like this. And if I had to pick one reason, that's why I'm doing this. It's the ability to pass on this nostalgia and this down to the next generation. And this is a case that they could potentially take this to college with them. The keyboard's more than robust. With a few, every so often you just put a new motherboard, processor, and memory into it. You have a whole new setup. You can keep upgrading software and keep upgrading components, and maybe I'll get lucky and it won't be a unique computer because there'll be millions of them out there. But I think because of the market this is targeted at, it'll be something very unique. I would really like to see people support this. If we can just even get to our $5,000 goal, and that's really only 50 units, 50 units at $100 a piece. If we can get to the $5,000 goal, we'll be able to make these ourselves, and we won't have to farm anything out, and that'll give us a great start. The links to some of this stuff, including the stickers, I'm going to put that in the video description, and I'll put the link to the Indiegogo page so that you can go ahead and go and support us. I really hope you do, even if it's just a curiosity, even if it's something you're kind of going, well, it's neat, but just forget about the butt part, and then just help us get this off the ground. But we also have an Amiga 120, a Commodore 128 Amiga inspired case. So for anybody who's really still this is still too tall, there is that case that that is in the works. It is being designed. So be looking for that in the future if this isn't quite your cup of tea. But even if this isn't your cup of tea, I support us anyway. You're really going to help us out. So this is Mr. Gigabytes, and thank you for watching.